Where should I point? Okay. Good afternoon, all. My name is Srinidhi. Okay. AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all great tools, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm really not here to talk about natural intelligence, why we should really not be worried about AI and all that stuff. And I find that a good way to know what's hot in the tech industry is to look at all the hoardings outside. The training centers are now starting to give us training on data science. It's been there for a year, but now even machine learning and AI as well. So that's the world we are in today. And that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about thinking. That's what we do up here. And to start with some background, thinking is really about forgetting. Okay, to think you have to really forget, and I will try to convince you that. If I tell you I'm thinking about my children, that's probably true. I know my children, I have 2 girls, how old they are, what they like, and so on. But if I tell you I'm thinking about all the users of our products, that's just impossible. I cannot do that. We have millions of users of Harman's product. So how do we deal with that? Maybe I'm actually thinking about our user I met yesterday and his experience. Maybe I'm thinking about a report I read in the news, maybe a review. Maybe I'm thinking about some sort of market segmentation. User in India versus user in EU, or a young user, an older user. So you see, we are simplifying things, we are classifying things. And the only way to think is to simplify, is to forget. The only way to think about millions of users of our products is to forget 99% of them and to think about a few of them based on those categories. Another example, or a mental example you can do, imagine this is a magic hammer, I clonk you on the head and suddenly you have perfect memory. You cannot forget anything. I give you a book, I ask you to read it in the night, come back tomorrow, and I ask you, what do you think about that book? You're going to be like this, like a deer in the headlights. You cannot make a judgment about that book because you know everything about that book. You know each and every word about that book. You can make a judgment, you can make a simplification or an idea about the book only by forgetting most of that book and remembering some key parts. So that's the first part. Thinking is about forgetting most of the stuff and thinking about what is important. Now I'll set the stage of where thinking happens. On one side, you have the world. That's where you have reality, you have data, information, facts, and so on. So sometimes there's nothing between you and reality. Let's say you're watching a cricket match, you go to the stadium and you watch the match, and you are right there, you feel it, you experience it. Sometimes, and most of data comes to us that way, that you read a news article or you watch somebody else's simplification of an event. Nevertheless, that's the world out there, and that's one side of the stage. On the other side, you have what is within us. We have simplifications, you have classifications. Like I said, you've forgotten most of those things and you've simplified the content. That's what's inside of us. So you have a model, you can call it a model, a box, a judgment, or a simplification. And thinking happens here on this stage, and thinking happens between us and the world. Let's dive a little more into this process of thinking. And to do that, I'm going to make a statement, an incomplete statement and ask you to complete it, you don't have to answer, in your head is fine. An example of a car is, you will come up with, okay, maybe a picture of a car comes in your head. BMW, Audi and Maruti, or so many other cars where our products are in. This is our first picture that comes into our head, an example of a car. What we did, we have this concept or a model of a car in our head, inside us, and we came to the world and mapped it to something real in the world. And this process is called the deductive process or deduction, where you're using models within you applied to the world. But this is one half. I'm going to make a different statement now. Car is an example of. The first thing which comes in your head is probably it's just a previous thought, it's personal transportation, it's the obvious choice. But think again, is that the only answer you can come to? Car is an example of a 3-letter word, is that right? Car is an example of something I like to draw, probably true for me. Car is an example of freedom of movement. A 4-wheeled vehicle, carnival, and you cannot stop. You can go on forever. You just cannot stop, right? And some of these statements are subjective, some of these are objective. A 3-letter word is very objective. It's easy to say it's right or wrong. If I tell you a car is an example of Airbus, an aeroplane or something, it's obviously wrong, right? But car is an example of something I like to draw is very subjective. It's different for me, it's different for you. But the key part of this slide is this is the other half of thinking. This is where you're forced to the concept. You have the world out here and you have this car, and I forced you to go back to the concept. And this process is called the inductive part of thinking, induction. And this is where creativity happens. This is where you're not limited. Okay? An example of this, a long time back, we knew of the moon. We had the moon going around the earth. And Galileo looked through his telescope, looked at Jupiter, and he saw some disks moving across the moon. Of course, he looked across several days, it's not moving right there. And then he wrote, Jupiter has moons. Okay? Now, until then, there was only one moon, the moon, moon with a capital M. But what happened at that moment is the moon with a capital M became moon with a small m. The moon in the real world became moon the concept. Right? That's the inductive process that he used to say Jupiter has moons. By the way, Jupiter has 79 moons, I just read today. So this is what he did. This is the inductive process. And thinking is nothing but the use of mental models and creation of mental models. It's like a two-stroke engine. You do one, use that model, come back, apply it. You're bored of that model, new model, apply it. So the brain, the thinking is 2 steps, and we shouldn't forget both these steps. Both these steps are very important, but we tend to forget the second step, the induction step. We get comfortable in our boxes. Think of these models as just boxes. It also helps us to understand a little more about these boxes, and to do that, I'll make a model about the model, try to classify these models. Okay? And to classify it, one way to do it would be to organize it in terms of permanence. Are these models permanent, which means towards me? Are these permanent? Are these models temporary, away from me? The other axis is, are these models under my control, going up? Are these models not under my control. Let's start with the top right, quadrant 1. Models which come after study, your engineering, your sciences, all the subjects you study, they are intentional, they are under your control, and they are strong. They are there for good, hopefully. The other type of models you have is below. They are really strong, but they are not under our control. Things like your beliefs, your value systems, religion, we don't know how it got there, but they're there and they influence us very deeply. The third kind of models are called representations. And I think knowledge and belief is easy to understand. Representations, I will just spend a few words. So representations are, let's say, you're overhearing somebody's conversation and you try to figure out what's happening. You say, okay, this is the boss and this is the employee and they're arguing with something. It's a model which you make up on the fly. The model wasn't there 2 minutes back. It's gone 2 minutes from now. Right? So that's a representation. And this is how we work. This is how our day-to-day life operates. We continuously keep making models of what's happening, try to understand if the model works, good. If it doesn't, throw it away. Next model. And the last type of models are the idea section. It's the laboratory. This is where it's under control. You're intentionally doing it, and it's not permanent. Ideas come, you test it out in the lab, it works great. Then you might push it into the right side, or you might say, no, this is really something below. Throw it away. Maybe it even goes into your belief side. But this is the playground where creativity happens, where you intentionally look at new ideas, apply this inductive process, and come up with new models. So that's it. Thinking, two-step process, induction, deduction, using models, creating mental models. Models are just simplifications. And you have these 4 types of models to try and classify them somehow. So now you really understand what you mean or what people mean when they say think out of the box. The box is just the model you're comfortable with. Look out of the box you're in. And the key part is you need a box. You need to know which box you're in to really go into another box. If those who played Mario, these boxes which keep scrolling down. I visualize it that way. You have to keep jumping from box to box. If you don't jump, you're in the fire. Okay, so that's the key part of the talk. Now we talk about what's the use of this? What's the point in knowing this? And one aspect is about staying relevant. I think there's nothing to be worried about AI taking over our jobs. Okay, AI is a tool. Machine learning is a tool. Deduction is easy. Automation will take over. And everything, all the AI, machine learning, neural network, anything you can come up with is just doing deduction. And it's great that you have machines to do deduction for you so you can do more of induction, because induction cannot be automated, at least not yet. So to stay relevant, the answer is simple. Use tools to do the deduction, automate away those boring things, and dream more to do induction. Finally, places where you can apply these ideas. When you're doing some brainstorming, you're trying to solve a problem, you need to first, wrong direction. You need to first set the right goal. What is the goal of this brainstorming session? Do I want to go into the world or back into my head? Both are important, but you need to define the scope. Because if you want to solve a real world problem, maybe debugging, drawing a fishbone diagram, you can't be off dreaming away and doing inductions. Right? You have to really define the scope. No, I want to solve this problem. I want to go into the world. I want to deduce. Creativity, new technology. Current technology plus new technology is not equal to the future. That's a very important thing to know. And this goes back, if you go back historically, you had mechanical calculators. I've never seen it, but I've seen videos of, you punch in something and you rotate and it gives you the answer. And then we invented electricity. So the immediate solution was, okay, let's stick a motor there. And now you have an electric calculator. It's not changing anything. It's still doing the same thing. You're not just pushing a button. But that's really not a new box. That's just two boxes put together. And the new box happened when we devised Boolean algebra and came up with a completely different way of computing. So the key part here is current technology plus new technology is not the future. The future is coming up with new boxes. Think about what Google did with data. 15 years ago maybe, I don't know how old Google is, but 15 years ago, the internet was completely one way. I would go to geocities.org or something, view some wonderful sites, static pictures. I had one too. And then Google came and said, no, with Google, you're receiving some data, but you're probably giving back more data to Google. That's a new box. Completely changed the way the internet works today. This idea is used, this model is helpful to understand yourself, right? Some of the models we have, especially in the south side, the beliefs, the representations, we need to identify them because these models influence each other. A model in the knowledge quadrant may be or will be influenced definitely by models in the bottom two. So we need to identify your thinking process, understand what's happening, and see if your judgment is sane. Finally, influencing people or influencing yourself. If you're trying to make a point, you need to understand the other person's viewpoint. What that really means is understand the other person's model. What are the models they're basing their viewpoints on? And you go there, you might realize the view from that box is better. You may change your mind. Or you go there, you may realize a better way to convince the other person that, hey, this view is better. What is the job of the CEO? If you have a perfect company like Harman, everyone does their job. What's the job of a CEO? The CEO's job is to identify what the next big box is and decide when to move there. That's the most important job of the CEO, also of the leaders we have. The world is always changing. New boxes are continuously being built. And by the way, Einstein didn't say this. I learned it's an internet thing. But the saying is very nice. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Okay? Isn't that happening today? With all these WhatsApp forwards and all the violence we see around it, it's exactly that. Right? Nevertheless, the world is always changing. Know how to use those boxes. Don't get stuck in a box. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujan. That was a very good, interesting talk. Now, before I have anything, I'll open the floor for any questions. I think they're still processing a lot of this information that came in their way. I have something for you, Sajid. I was wondering, you have a lot of things thinking outside the box. Can you think outside the KR Puram and the Silk Board junctions? Is there any way?
The box is not so big.
We literally had to get a helicopter or something else because I was rolled out of the show today.
Stay closer.
It's inside the box for you, I guess. Anyways, thanks a lot for this session. Okay, please stay. May I ask Ravi TDS to come on stage, please?
you hear me? Sojan, that's a very good talk. Yeah. So you have held all of us captivated. Yeah. This is one of my favorite topics as well. So we should think, if car is a box, should think outside the car. Yeah. Think about more other activities that are outside the car, infotainment and things like that. And that's where the company is heading to. Yeah. So very good talk. Thank you so much.